Hey DIYers, project for today's video is definitely a little unique and probably one you haven't even thought of or even seen before. And that is, I'm putting a foundation watering system in, but not just any watering system. Oh no. Now you may have seen a video too where they take a soaker hose, something like this one here, and they bury it in the ground, or they take a drip line like this here and they lay it on top of the ground. But all of them have one of these ugly hoses that comes up out of the ground, it's hooked to a pressure reducer and a timer, and it's screwed into your outdoor hose faucet, and all of that's exposed to the elements 24/7. Well, I am definitely not doing mine like that, of course. Now one, you shouldn't put your hose on top of the ground, so I'm burying mine 6 inches in the ground. 2, I'm putting mine and hooking it up to my existing in-ground sprinkler system, so I'm not gonna have these ugly hoses sticking up out of there. And 3, I'm also putting mine around the edge of my fence border for the reasons I'm gonna talk about here in a minute. And lastly, when I'm all done, it's gonna look like this was put in when the house was built. So it's gonna add value to my house. So you're asking yourself, who in the world even needs to do this project? Well, from what I found, there's like 3 criteria to determine whether you need to do this or not. First one, while it's not as important as the last 2, has to do with what type of climate you live in. Now, in case you didn't know, the United States is broke up into 8 climate zones. Climate zone 1 is the tip of Florida, tip of Texas, and the Hawaiian Islands. And climate zones 7 and 8 are Alaska. Now, I'm gonna figure this project's gonna pertain to climate zones 1 to 3, maybe 4. The second criteria is gonna be what kind of foundation do you have? Do you have a walkout basement? Do you have a post and beam? Do you have a crawl space? Or like me, have a foundation on grade, which just means they poured the concrete foundation right on top of the dirt. And the third criteria, which is probably the most important, is what kind of soil is around your house and foundation. And what I'm talking about is clay. Where I'm at, all I have is clay. There's nothing but clay all around. These are all built on clay. And the only topsoil I have is what came with the sod when they built the house. So if you live in a hot summer, it goes weeks to months without rain, you've got a post and beam or a crawl space or a slab on grade house and nothing but clay, then this project's for you. So let me just take a minute and explain what I mean by all this. So clay, when it dries out, it shrinks. And so when you go weeks and months with no rain, it can shrink a lot. And when it does, it's gonna pull away from your foundation, it's gonna pull away from your fence post, pull away from the border of your crawl space, pull away from the post of your post and beam foundation. And it could pull away quite a bit. It can easily pull away 1 to 2 inches, no problem. And it doesn't just pull away at the surface, it pulls away down deep. As you'll see in this video, I got areas where it's pulled away from the foundation 10 inches down in the ground. I mean, it dries up so much, I've got cracks in my yard that look like earthquake fault lines. So as that dirt pulls away from your foundation, it leaves it unsupported. And over time, it can cause it to crack or sink. And if that happens, you could have some real damage, and it can be quite expensive to fix that. So what they've started doing in my area for over the last several years, in fact, they even did it to my foundation, is before they pour it, they string 1/2-inch cable from one side to the other and put a plastic sleeve around it so the concrete won't stick to it. And after they pour the concrete and it's cured for however long it needs to, they come back with a machine and they pull and stretch that cable to whatever predetermined amount they need, and they cut it off. Now the foundation is under compression and acts as one big block, and it's more resistant to that sinking and cracking that you have. And the way to determine if they did it to your foundation is just look along the edge. If you see these concrete filled circles like this, in fact that's the cable right there, then you know they've done this to your foundation. And so with all this, you can see how a post and beam or a crawl space type foundation could be at extreme risk for damage if it's on a clay-based soil. Now you're just saying to yourself, wait till it rains, it'll be fine, it'll all go back where it's supposed to. Well, yes and no. This summer we went 40+ days in my area with no rain, or so little rain it made no difference. That means that's 40+ days, the dirt's pulled away and your foundation is unsupported. And when it finally does rain, the question is, will it rain enough to make up for the drought? And when the ground is that dry, if you have a downpour, all that rain mostly becomes runoff because it doesn't have a chance to soak in because the ground's so dry. So after years of this cycle of drought and rain, you can see how the foundation might be at risk for sinking and cracking. And so with the foundation watering system, I'm going to alleviate all that. Now just a warning, it's kind of a long video, and it's actually a 2-part video because there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to get the project itself completed. Plumbing to do, issues with that. Not only got to move and dig dirt, I got cable lines to move, I got cable lines to remove, I got painting. There's just a lot to do in order to get this project itself done. And after all that, I finally get to start putting it together, putting the pipe in, testing it, and then lastly, laying the sod. So before I start this project, I went online to the 811 website, which is the local municipality here in the United States that you get a hold of if you're going to start digging in your yard. And they'll come out and mark and outline any buried utilities that are in the way of your project. For my in-ground watering system, it needs to be about 12 to 18 inches away from the foundation. I've chose to do about 12 inches. So I took a hand sprayer and some Roundup mixed up, and I sprayed along the fence and along the house where the in-ground watering system is going to go, because I wanted that grass dead because it's easier to work with when it's dead. This St. Augustine is kind of thick and I just didn't really want to mess with it. And I got some other plans and I didn't care if it was dead. Now this section here you see where it's dead. Remember back in the video where I did the digless trenching for my cable TV line? Well, I need to move it, and I need to move something else. So where it's going right here is fine. The AT&T cable line runs right along that fence, which is going to be in the way of my in-ground watering system. So I got to move it, and basically I'm going to move it and put it where the Verizon cable line is. Up here, it wound up going in next to the fence, and again it's going to be in my way. And two, our future plans are right up in here is to make a flower bed, if you will, actually a tall flower bed with like palms and bamboo and stuff to actually hide that house from our view, so we have kind of a privacy area in our backyard. And so to do that, I planned on having about 3 foot of this taken up. Well, to do that, that cable is going to be in the way. I don't want to, if there's a problem, I don't want them digging through my flower bed to get it out. So it's going to go up in front here, and that's why it's a dead section right there. As you see, I rented a sod cutter to cut this grass. It's all dead, and I thought it would just rake off with a hoe, but it won't. Even dead, this stuff is embedded in the dirt. So I basically took a sod cutter and cut the path of everywhere I got to dig. And as you see, it didn't go as well as it did the first time I used it. And I don't know if it's because the grass is dead. I set it on its lowest setting. I basically just wanted to scalp the grass off and not take really hardly any dirt. I don't know if that's the reason. I don't know if it's because the ground's so dry, but it didn't work as well, but I got it done. So right now the yard looks like a mess, but don't worry, we're gonna fix that. So I started out cleaning it up with my hand and putting it in the wheelbarrow, then switched over to my square-headed shovel to pick all the dead grass up from where I cut it with the sod cutter. And then I'm just putting it into the back end of my truck, because luckily I've got a landfill about 7 miles away from me that I can take this to and dump it at. But like areas here where the sod cutter didn't get against the house, I just took a square-headed shovel and dug them up and got it all taken up. And it was actually pretty easy because, well, the grass is dead. And the same thing with like around where the sprinkler valve is and that sort of thing. But here's what I really want to show you. This is the prime reason I'm doing this. Now this big old gaping hole here, it looks like a fault line in the ground. If you remember back, if you happen to watch the video where I used the spade thing to bury my Comcast cable line, this is where it was. It never came back together. Now, you couldn't see it when the grass was green and grown over it because the actual top inch or inch and a half of dirt and grass closed over it. But when you remove that, here's this big old gaping hole where I put that in. And that's the problem I'm having here, is I've got a very heavy clay soil, and we've had 40 days of heat warnings. And what that is here is anytime it feels like temperatures over 108, they issue a heat warning. We've had 40 days of that and very, 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 very little rain. And this is what happens. That clay just shrinks back and it just causes your yard to split open like a melon. I'll show you over here against the fence. This is deep. So like some dirt's already fallen in here and filled this some, but this is 7 inches deep. That's how deep that crack is. And I'm sure there's areas I could probably get it down close to 12 inches, which is how far, that's 8, how far my cable is buried. But like along here where I poured my fence border, that's 7 inches. There's 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 20, almost 21 inches deep, where it's just a cavern. And it's pretty bad along this fence border. I mean, see how far that is pulled away? But like right here where these sprinkler heads are, it's nice and tight against there. And it's because, well, when the sprinklers go off, this is a heavy watered area, and so it keeps the ground wet and moist so it doesn't shrink and collapse down. And that's what I'm hoping with putting this in-ground watering system is going to do. It's going to keep all this moist and wet so that it doesn't do that. And I've got something else I'm going to do to try and help it also. Because along this edge of the house, again, there's some, it's kind of filled in when I dug out that dead grass, but here's a sprinkler head right here. And so this is still moist, and so it hasn't pulled away from the house. But I'll show you an area down there where the sprinklers didn't do such a good job, and it has pulled away. You can see here where it's pulled away. Along the edge up here, it's pulled away. Not near as bad as it is along my concrete border, but it has pulled away quite a bit. Next thing I'm going to do is dig out my sprinkler heads and the line that connects them. They got a main pipe that runs down here, and then it has a T-fitting that a side piece comes out and hooks to it. This is just all gooey clay. I've got anywhere from nothing to maybe 2 inches of topsoil. So you see you got this black line that tees off from this fitting right here, and it's flexible so it can move and be adjusted as needed. And then pipe's about 6 to 7 inches in the ground. So now I can have this up here out of the way when I do my trenching and not worry about hitting this. So I got 7 more of these to do, and I got a couple of other things I got to dig out, and I'll show you when I get to those. So I've uncovered all the sprinkler heads, and I found the electrical wire that powers the sprinklers and uncovered it. In fact, kind of hit it with the shovel because I thought it was going to be somewhere else, and so I've had to put some electrical tape over it for now. It still works. I didn't cut through the wires. The sprinklers all still work. And I found the power line for the AT&T satellite, and somewhere along the line, and putting this post in, I guess, or when I buried that Verizon line, I cut this. So here's the end. Now, first I thought I was going to go ahead, dig the trench out, give them a call, and see if they want to come out and replace it. But I've since thought, screw it. I don't use it, not going to use it. So I'm going to take this box off the house. I'll just cut these wires or poke them back inside. In fact, I'll use this conduit here to go over my Verizon wire because they obviously didn't bother to put one. And I'm still going to uncover and take this wire out because it runs down the area where I need to put my foundation watering system, and so I'm just going to get it out of there and be gone with it. And here's the AT&T line here. It won't pull through. What I'm going to try and do is undig it in that corner and pull that through and see if this is loose enough. I can just pull it out without having to trench the whole thing. But if I have to dig it out a little bit, I'll just dig it out a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and dig out around this box and get a big area around this box uncovered and get the valves and everything exposed so I can see them really well. All right, I got all this uncovered. And if you remember back when I reburied this, my cable TV line, I used that trenching spade and buried it 12 inches. Well, for some reason, it wasn't 12 inches right here, and I nearly cut through it with the shovel. It's only at about 6, 7 inches at this point, but down here it was 12. So I don't know if the dirt has heaved this thing up, because I would swear I had this 12 inches in the ground. So it makes me a little nervous. I'm going to have to be careful when I uncover this, and I'm going to go ahead and uncover this. I taped it up with electrical tape, but I think I'm going to get it all trenched again and call them and have them come replace it just to be safe, because I exposed the copper wire. Yeah, this comes up and then back down. So I don't know if the ground did that, or did I just not remember not burying it 12 inches. Here's my AT&T line. It's going to be very easy to get it out, because I can just take my trenching spade here, or trenching shovel, and do this, and just follow along and uncover it, because it's not in the ground very far. Alrighty, I got the AT&T line out, and I don't know if those guys that come out from 811 to mark your lines don't know how to use the machine, or it's really hard and tricky to use it, or what. But the guy that came out this last time assured me that that AT&T line ran straight into here. It does not. It runs straight down that way, where the first guy that came out last year said it did. And I know some of you are probably going, well, I don't call them. You don't need to call them. I do it just in case, because if I cut through something, I can go, hey, I called them and they told me it wasn't there. So that's why I did it. The other thing I found is my cable TV line, which ran originally down this direction, was really close to the surface for some reason. And over here where this big crater is in the yard where I had it buried, you could actually see it down inside there. And I actually took a tape measure and measured. It was at 8 inches. I know I had it at 12. I didn't think about this. I didn't realize it. I had no idea. I'm assuming the ground through the dry and the wet spell caused that cable to be heaved up 4 inches here. Now over in that area there, right where it made the turn, it was only in the ground maybe 2 inches. And then as I got over there to that side, it was probably about 3 to 4 inches. So, I mean, it moved it a lot. So I'm glad I'm taking this out, because this time I'm gonna trench it 12 inches deep, put it in there and pack it. And this is as far as I could just pull it out by hand, because it dives down under the water lines for my sprinkler system that go right through here. So it looks like it came up high and then went right back down and settled underneath the irrigation pipe. And it stayed where it's supposed to. It didn't, when I uncovered this, it wasn't up underneath there tight. So it's at about 12 inches. And it's still 12 inches right here. But I know between here and down there, it goes from 12 inches to about 6 or 7 below ground. And one thing that has helped is I went through and I've watered this yesterday and this morning to soften it up so it's easier to dig, because otherwise yesterday it was like digging concrete. I finished getting all this trenched out. I got my cable TV line all done out. It comes along here and then takes a hump up, and then it kind of back down. In fact, I hit it again because of that, but this time didn't go very far through it, so very happy about that. Still got my cable TV and internet. And I got down here all dug out and ready. I got my sprinkler valve area here all dug out. And I dug a big area like this because I wanted to see the pipes and what was going on. This pipe here is my water supply line. I know that because it's 1.5 inches, and it comes in and feeds both of these valves. There's actually arrows on these valves that tell you which way the water flow is, and it's this direction. As it comes out, it comes to here, and then is into a reducer of a 1 inch. And out of this valve here, it reduces immediately. This string here is zone 3, and I know that for 2 reasons, because 1, the color of the wire that's hooked to it, and 2, where the pipes are running. Zone 3 is over in this area, and so it's feeding that, whereas this one here loops back around and goes that direction. That's my zone 4. And like I say, this here is a supply line to my zones 1 and 2. So I'm gonna have to get a new valve, a new box cover. Now what I want to do is get this taken care of, and what I mean is I'm gonna cover it with electrical grade PVC conduit, just like my electricity is that's coming into the house. When I put this in with that trenching spade, somebody made a comment that it should be encased in some piping, and you're right, it probably should, but the cable company didn't have it that way, so I guess they say no. What I do want to do is encase this and protect it. I've got a 10-foot stick here. It'll come from here down to here. This swooping 90 will come out. I'll have a straight piece here, another swooping 90 this direction, and I'll have pipe come to just on the other side of this fence line here. Then the rest of it will just be bare. And as far as the end, I tried to find an end cap, but they don't make them, don't have them, whichever. So what I may do is just plug this with some silicone caulking so dirt doesn't come back in there. But the first thing I need to do is, 1, get this all out of the way, and 2, I need to get this dug down to 12 inches, and then the part of my foundation here is in the way, so the pipe won't sit flush against the house. So what I'm going to do is take a grinder and cut that out. A couple more inches. And I pre-wetted this with the hose to try and soften it up so it's a little easier to dig out. Because I said before, this hard clay, when it's dry, it is like concrete. And that is no joke. And I'm just using a little garden spade here to do this. About 10.5 inches. Alrighty, I'll finish getting this dug out. I'm gonna dig it out underneath this pipe really well. And then we'll get this dug, and then we'll get it all fitted. Now that my trench is all dug out, I just got to get rid of this concrete here from the overpour of the foundation. I've got just an angle grinder. I've got a Bosch diamond masonry blade in here. And then I got the hose. I'm going to just spray it a little bit as I do it, or try to anyway. Keep the dust down and the blade cool. So let's see how it works. Got a masonry chipper, a 3-pound hammer, just like that. Clean it up a little bit, because I don't want rough edges here rubbing against that pipe and causing it to get cut. That's why I'm doing all this. And I want it to sit flush against the house. And when my pipe sits against here, sit against it and won't get cut up. A couple things about this gray PVC pipe that's designed for electrical work is that the fittings come with a flared end on them and a non-flared. So you got to be careful to plan out how you're going to do this, so you've always got a flared end for a connection. Whereas in your like white PVC Schedule 40, it comes straight like this, and you have to buy your connections to go on it. I'd be tempted to start it like this, flared fitting at the top, but when I go to join a piece of pipe here, I'll have nothing to fix it to. It's gonna have to be like that. And so this 10-foot stick, you see it has nothing, and this end it has the flared end. Set this in here and get a measurement to cut, about 1.5 inches. So 43, 44 inches. Now you can cut this stuff with a hacksaw, table saw, miter saw, whatever you want to do, hand saw, but they also make these PVC cutters like this, and that's what I'm going to use. Just rough this end up so the glue will stick really good. Just going to round off the inside edge a little bit so I don't have a sharp edge the cable's going to set on. I'm just using this Odie's primer and glue pack here to do this PVC. I mean, this is PVC. This glue here is for PVC and CPVC. I don't know as there needs to be a special glue to do this type of pipe, and this stuff can be kind of messy, and this primer will stain your hands if you're not careful. Rub it around, do the inside, smear it around, smear it on the inside, and join them together. Always give it a little twist and just let it set up. Let's test our fit. That's going to be perfect. In case you're wondering where this water come from, that's all that water from when I sprayed that to cut that concrete out. This clay doesn't absorb water. It doesn't soak in. This is going to have to just sit here and evaporate. And if it don't, by the time I need to, I'm going to have to just scoop it out with a cup or something. Let's have a straight pipe come here and this go here. Then I'll have a straight pipe and I'll have it end about right there. I'm going to leave this as 2 pieces. I'm not going to glue to there. With it coming down and making this turn, it's going to be a little hard to snake around in there. So what I'll do is have this sit in there and then glue that in once I get this new cable run. You want this to be clean. Make sure you don't sand this when there's dirt on it and sand the dirt into it. So this will just go in here when I'm ready and get glued in. This will set against the house, this will set here, and I'll have a straight piece going off there. Picked up this mini trencher at Lowe's this morning at the tool rental. It's designed to go about 12 inches deep. It only cuts about 3 inches wide. I went with this one versus the 18 or 24 inch trencher that's automated and it'll help pull, because I wanted something that could get as close as possible to the edge of the fence and the edge of the house, and that was this. We'll see how this works. This one you have to kind of pull and stop, pull and stop, but we'll see how it works. I'm out here, I'm gonna trench for the cable line first out here in the open, so get a feel for it, and then we'll go down and do along the fence and everything. So some of you might ask, why am I not doing this by hand? Well, because this ground is hard as concrete. 2, it'd take 4 times longer. And 3, with the way this grinds the dirt up, it grinds it up into small little pieces and fines, and that's what I want versus these big hard chunks that I got over here on the side. I'm gonna have to use this dirt to fill back in this hole when I'm done, and I want to be able to do it with fine stuff versus these big old clumps and chunks. Well, that didn't go quite as well as I had planned it. I did get the trenches dug all the way around in the backyard where I needed it, and I got the trench dug for the cable. But this dirt is so hard and so dry, even for that trencher. You can see in some areas like here, these big old boulders are, it just chunked them out. It couldn't really grind them out, and that's what I needed it to do, is grind it out into this fine stuff here. And what I had originally planned on doing with the trencher was to do this trench like I got here, and then come back and try and trench this area here and get it all broke up and loosened up. But by the time I got this part done, it took all day, and I'm gonna tell you what, that thing beat the tar out of me. It was a lot of work to do it. Now in some areas where I had already kind of wetted it up for some other stuff, it went right through that real easy, but this dry stuff, it struggled, and I don't think getting a bigger unit would have really helped much. It had just weighed more and been more work to do it. And don't forget, it was like 103 degrees real temp, like 110, 112 feels like temp, I mean the heat index. Out here in this bright sun, it was beating me up. And you can see in this corner, I was able to get the trencher and work it around in here, and dig this up. This is what I was wanting to do with all of it. But this was earlier in the day, and so it wasn't too bad. It was still hard. I had more energy at that time, but by the end of the day, I didn't have the energy to do this. In fact, I didn't even really finish out front. But the corners, this corner and that corner down there, I got this done. And you see here for where I did the cable, I just got one pass here down to the 12 inches. Whereas I did get 2 passes over there, because again, it was the first thing I did. And what I was able to do in this little section was trench it down my 12 inches and then just kind of come over here and do this all the way back to get me a wide space. You can see kind of that gouge there where it did it. I got it wide here, but again, it's a lot of work and the dirt kind of dictates where it goes, so you really got to work to get it to stay where you need it to until it starts digging a trench, and then it kind of goes in there. Now there's dirt down in here and that's not a problem. I'm gonna come back and clean this out. But not to worry, I have a plan B. And if that don't work, I have a plan C. Now I know some of you might be saying, just take a shovel and dig the rest of this out by hand. Well, yes, I could do that, but remember, this stuff's like concrete, so hitting it with a shovel, it just doesn't do anything. And 2, it's a lot of work to do that. I try and find a machine to do it. Some of you might be saying, why are you gonna do that? Why are you just do the trench and be done? Well, you gotta keep watching to find out. So this is my next plan. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a shovel and fill in the trenches that I dug around the perimeter. I'm not going to fill in the cable trench. In fact, I'm going to dig all that out and get it dug out so it's all clean and ready to go when the cable people come to put a new cable in. But I'm going to go through and push all this dirt back over these trenches all the way around the perimeter. Now I've gotten all this filled in where I trenched everything with the trencher and got that all put back in. But as you see, I didn't even bother to do out here, because by the time I'd gotten to do this part here, I was just wore out and said, screw it, I'm gonna go to plan B. And so what is plan B? Well, I'm gonna take and use this hose and water all this area down that I need to dig up in order to do what I need to do. And then I'll come back in an hour or so after I've done some stuff and water it again. I'll give it kind of a real good soaking this time, and then come around and give it light little soakings after that. And all I'm looking for is to soften this up, you know, down about 6 inches. So when I go to get the next piece of equipment to try and get this all trenched up, it'll be much softer and easier to do. And when I was doing some hand digging, I did this and it did make it much easier. I didn't have to do it a whole lot. I just had to get it softened up about 6-8 inches down. So I'll go through and get this all watered up really well this first time. Now I need to clean out the trench where the cable's gonna go. And while this isn't directly really related to the watering system I'm putting in, but in order to put it in, I had to move the cable. It means I had to dig this trench, which means I gotta do all this work. So I'm just taking a trenching spade or shovel, whichever you want to call it, going back through and digging all this out, and I'm saving all this dirt in a pile over there to use to put back in here. And how to get in here? Well, yeah, well, the machine dug it out, but at the same time, while I was doing other stuff, a bunch of it went back in while I was trying to get it cleaned up. So it's going to be a few days before the cable company gets out here to replace this. I'm going to take this cable out, get my piping put in, put that cable in. I want to get this buried because this is kind of a falling, tripping hazard having these deep holes. I wish they'd give me a new box, but anyhow, use a zip tie to keep it closed. I'm just going to take some wire snips, and then you just unscrew this, push it down through there's a little rubber grommet here, keep the water out. Got that back up there for right now. Now they've got just these little clips here holding it in. I'm hoping I can reuse these holes when I do it, but we'll see. Now I'll just pull the cable out from under everything and get it out of the way. Set this in here. I've already pre-sanded that fitting. Sanded this fitting, put a little tape on it so when I snake it around through here, it doesn't get mud on it because it's hard to clean it off down inside here. I had to go buy a coupler so I could join these two together, and I've already got this glued. And you got to be careful when you put that glue on, you smush this on, because the squeeze out goes in here and it's going to wind up clogging the hole. So I had to go in there and kind of clean that out. When you're working down here in the dirt like this, make sure you got plenty of room underneath to do this work. And all this section of pipe is here is what's left over from that 10-foot stick. 2 screws in here that I took out, so this will come up through there. With this fitting on here, it's hard to go right straight through this rubber grommet. And when they do the new one, they won't have this on here, so it'll be real easy for them to push it up through there. Here we go. And I did 3/4 because I don't know if 1/2 inch would have been big enough. All right. What I was afraid of. So it'll come and make this turn, but it won't make that one. So I'm gonna get a string and put through here, tie onto it, and then just pull it through. I just hooked my shop back up to the end, and it sucks that string right in there. Yep, there it is. And with a little finesse, came right on through. No damage to the cable. Screw it back on. Alrighty, got it all buttoned up. This is on. This hole down here works, so I just put this old screw back in that hole. Up here it wouldn't fit because the hole's clear over here, so I drilled a new hole. It's tight, sitting, and then moving. This is up underneath here, so the water's gonna drip down in it. Take some dirt, fill it in to about the top of this exposed pipe right here, because that's how deep my in-ground watering system's gonna be. And water this really good, so the bottom is soft. And I just went and got some of the dirt that I had piled up, and then just take a 4x4 and pack it in. Needs a little more dirt, but I'll water this really, really good. Put some more dry over it, pack it in, and this will be done. Well, I got in a bit of a time crunch and I forgot to film any of this, but what I did was I went down to my local Lowe's, which is just about 10 miles away, rented a small hydraulic tiller that would self-drive itself, and that I could just let sit and till down in the dirt, not have to hold on to it. Hydraulic tiller worked wonderful. Now it did help tremendously me watering all these areas down that I needed to do this at for about 2.5 days. And that tiller did a really good job of getting through it. I had a couple spots that were a little hard, but it got through it. Now from where the dirt was against the house, the bottom here is a good 6 inches, and that's what I want. But out here it's about 4, so I'm gonna need to take a little bit more because the ground's gonna slope this direction. That's why I gotta do the same around there and a little bit over there. I want this at least 6 inches deep when I put in my foundation watering system. The other thing that happened yesterday, it came and replaced my cable line. The little pipes I have at each end worked out great. I went through the pipes really easily. Now I know some of you are probably asking why I did these pipes. In case, just in case. Now if there never is another time, this cable has to be replaced again. I don't have to dig into my yard. I don't have to dig under the neighbor's fence. I don't have to dig in his yard. This cable into the box where it's at on his side of the property. All I'm gonna have to do is redig this tree. The reason I put the pipe here and ran it clear out to here, one, it's out away from my sprinkler electric line, under the sprinkler lines. It's away from all that. So again, if this has to be replaced, I can just expose this, run it up through. I can avoid digging all that and worrying about hitting sprinkler lines, electrical lines, and all of it. So now today's job was to get this trench filled in. Before I do that, like I said, yesterday we had kind of a flash rain and it pooled here. I'm worried a little water got in this pipe. I am going to seal these ends up on each end. Take my air compressor and hose, open the box up and blow air through here. If there happens to be any water in here, get it blown out so I can seal it up. I'll seal this one up last. I'll go down and seal the other end first. Probably start filling the ditch some to give that a little bit of time for it to dry out. So I'm just going to use some 100% silicone sealant. Plug this hole. It's not ready for underground or anything like that, but plug the hole. I'll give it a couple hours or so before I've packed dirt over it, ready for water exposure in 30 minutes. But any very little dirt stuff will get inside there. Ever has to be replaced, you can just pull this out and the plug will come with it. That's all I'm going to do. I'll do the other end the exact same way. And I did the same thing up here. I put caulking right around the gap between this pipe and this box here to seal that in so any water comes down around here, it doesn't drip down inside that tube. And this caulking says it's flexible about 40%. Other than it's not ready for outdoor use, it should be fine. This is the next thing I want to get started on. This is the cable for my sprinkler valves to control them. And this is thin old plastic PVC that broke with the weed eater. So I've got a new pipe before I bury all this. That way this is all done and watertight. I got this area all cleaned out, give me a nice area to work. So when they put this in, all they did was stick this up here, put some caulk around it and hope it held. Well, you see how well that did. So what I'm gonna do instead is drill a hole just a little bit bigger than this diameter. So this will fit down in there, and then I'll caulk around it so it holds it in there. And then I've dug out deep enough that I know that I'm underneath my pipe here. This is 1 inch on the outside. I took a 3/4 and actually sanded the outside of it, sanded the inside of this a little bit, and slid them in there together. And I wanted it a really thick wall, so if the weed eater hits it, it's not going to snap it in half like it did this. But I'm going to wind up putting something around here so I don't have to worry about weed eating anyway. I'm going to have this go on here like this, and this will come out here like that. I'll have to cut it. And then I've got this cap I'm going to put on here, and I'll drill a hole in it for the wire to go through. First what I need to do is go in there and unhook this and pull the wire through. So I'm here at the controller for the sprinklers. And as you see, they've got just PVC pipe in here that runs down the wall and goes out through the sheetrock. I'm gonna try and do all this without having to take the box off and pull this out. I got a trick up my sleeve if I need to. What I'm gonna do is take a picture of these wires with my phone so that I know which colored wire goes with which valve for the sprinklers and I don't get them all switched up. I know white is hot. I take a screwdriver and just loosen those screws up so I can get the wires out. I got 2 wires left that aren't going to any valves in here. These will go to valves 5 and 6, which will run the in-ground watering system. All right, let's go outside and see if we can pull this out. Hardest part will be getting all this back together. All right, so let me get the wire out of this. I measured the outside of this with my digital calipers. It was 1 5/16 inches. I don't have that size bit, but I do have 1 3/8 Forstner bit. And in case you're wondering, I painted this all up when I painted the house. And then what I did is I drilled a hole through this plywood because there's a big hole here. If I tried to drill this without it, it'd just tear it all up. We don't want that. This other siding comes up to probably about here. Just want to drill through this piece of siding because that'll be enough thickness for this to fit in there just right. Okay, get this lined up as close as we can. Hold that really tight. All right, that's just beautiful. Fits in there really nice little fit, a little bit of slack, that's okay. Now, if you watch the videos where I painted the house, you'll know that the only thing behind here, tar paper, and I didn't go through the tar paper. I'm gonna put caulking in there and smash this in there and caulk around it really nice to seal it up. Let me go get the primer, put that on, because that'll have to dry about 30 minutes. Then I'll come back and paint it, and that'll have to dry 4 or 5 hours before I can do anything. So with the dirt I'm pulling out of there, I'm going through and putting about 3 inches of it into this trench here. I'm not going to fill it up in one passing, because I want to be able to pack each lift and get it good and tight in there. For this area in here, I just take my 8x8 plate packer and go along and pack this stuff in. Now, before I put this lift in, I watered all of that previous packed in lift really heavily so that when I pack this, I'll pack into that and hopefully pack it even better underneath there. And then for this area here, I just take a 2x4 and pack it in with that. And for this area in here, I just use a 4x4. Now down here where the wire's bare and down there where I put the silicone, tomorrow I'll go through and fill that over and pack it in. That should be plenty of time for it to set up. And I just take the hose again, water this lift in really well, and rinse and repeat. And I'll just keep doing that till this whole trench gets filled up. I'm doing it this way because I want to make sure this cable stays down where it's at and it doesn't migrate up like it did last time. I made sure I packed really good down underneath that sprinkler line. Something I wanted to show you guys, and for all you naysayers out there that say this isn't necessary, I've dug this down a good 6 inches, and I still have, it's 6 and 7 inches separation from the foundation of the dirt. This is 9 inches long. I just measured it, and it goes down in there and doesn't hit anything solid. So it is, even this far down, pulling back away from my foundation. Now there is concrete underneath here still, which is good. I got the post-stressed poured foundation that I've talked about with the cable in it. But this is definitely necessary. Got this painted last night. It's been drying now for a good 14 hours, so it's good and set up and ready. Before I get that all set though, I got to put a heat shrink wrap on this section of the cable where I'd hit it with the shovel, and I just electrical taped it to patch it for now. But I want this shrink wrap on there because I want a little better watertight seal, or at least try to. This is the smallest I could find in a 6-inch length. Everything else was either 3 or 4. Clearly need longer than that, and this 6 is barely gonna reach, but it should do fine. It says it's a 4-to-1 shrink, so it should shrink down enough to close around this, or at least that's my hope. Get it centered over where I want it. And then I've got my heat gun. Looks like it shrunk down tight enough. Alrighty, I think that's the most it's gonna shrink. Alright, I took a pin and marked where this needed to line up at. Now I've already sanded this on the inside, so all I gotta do is glue it up. And to avoid getting a bunch of glue inside here, I'm just gonna put the glue on the outside of the pipe and then fit it in there. Because I found when I do it on both, it gets a big glob inside there, and I don't want that because it's liable to stop my wire from moving through. Give it a good twist. No globs inside. I'll sand this end again, and inside here, I'll glue this on, and I'll put it back over there and see where I need to cut it off. And then I got a cap I'm putting on here. I'm gonna drill a hole in. I got 11/32 bits. I basically just took the bit over to the wire and made sure it was wider than the wire. Not a whole lot, but enough that I know I can get it through there fairly easily. That way I don't have a big hole to fill. I'm gonna try and just drill in the bottom of this without hurting myself. I'm gonna file the edge of this just a little bit so it's not sharp. The shrink tape worked great. It's nice and tight. I got this taped off for caulking. Got this all put together. Now there's nothing left but to feed the wire through. And let's hope it all goes through easily. So far, so good. Nope, I'm gonna have to put some string through here. So I fed this string through here. I'm gonna take and wrap it around this, hopefully tight enough it stays to pull it through. Yep, there we go. Alrighty. Now we'll just pull the wire through. There we go. And I have a feeling I might have to do the same for here. Well, crap. I gotta drill the hole bigger. I had to drill a bigger hole in this end so that that shrink wrap that I put on there would fit through. So I got this all through, and unfortunately I had to take off that other side, and I put this wire through, and I'm gonna hook these onto it and pull it through from the other side. At least that's my plan. How's that sound? Alrighty, now let's try not to make a big, huge mess. Put a little caulking on here. Put this through without getting caulking all over it. And I got a little potting soil, and I mixed some of that other dirt that I've got ground up in with it to kind of hold it in place. Put just a little bead on here for now, because I'm going to take my finger and smash it into the crack really good. Okay, I'll let that caulking set up for a few hours, then I'll go inside and finish putting it back together. I don't want to tug on that wire while this is still wet and cause it to get all screwed up, but I got the dirt packed around here to hold it in place. When I go to run my water line, I'll just dig a little spot out and run it over it, and it'll do well. It's an elastomeric caulking, meaning it stretches, and it takes a while for it to set up before you can paint it. So I'll let it set for 3 or 4 days, then I'll come back, primer around it, and paint it, and it'll blend in and look beautiful. Well, I finally got my trench all cleaned out and down to the depth I wanted. I wanted at least 6 inches. In some areas it may be a little deeper than that, and that's okay. The tiller I used did a fabulous job, but it only got down to about 5 inches in a lot of spots and didn't quite get to that 6-inch mark. I got my cable trench all filled in and packed, and I watered between each layer and packed the snot out of it. In fact, it's kind of a little overpacked because I'm expecting some settling. Now for this sprinkler head, it's too far back. And I'm gonna wind up doing is I'm gonna fill this with dirt, and then I'm gonna come back and take some out, and I'm basically gonna make a rock garden, if you will, around this, so I don't have to worry about weed eating behind here. And this sleeve is what I had on there before, so the weed eater would tear this up and not this pipe, because I actually broke the pipe here because of my weed eater. So I need to move this forward, and this post here is right next to it, and I had that planned when I put it in. I knew it was going to be like that. But the same thing, I got a 90, then a fitting, and then this pipe. So I'm probably going to have the pipe about here, because I think my irrigation line is going to come, I may have it come back around this direction so it keeps this wet. If I go in front, this area is liable to stay dry, and I don't want that. And I'm just going to use a plain PVC cutter here and cut this tubing. The fitting that this is on has barbs, so this won't come off, so you got to cut it off. So I have my new sprinkler head. Let's go ahead and get this twisted on. That should do it. And then you just press this on. There, just like that. So before I can just start dumping in the topsoil that I got to do one more thing. Tubing I'm using drip line, and it's got a hole every 12 inches in it. And I was hoping I could just lay it in the dirt to cover it and be done. But I was worried about this, and the guy at the store where I got this stuff, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, is worried about the dirt clogging them holes, as was I. So what I'm gonna do is make a little trench in here that's about 2 1/4 by 2 1/4 inches square, and put the dirt on each side of that and pack it. Then put my tubing in here, and you'll see how I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna have some pea gravel around it, and then wrap it and put the dirt over the top of it. So how to make this groove? Well, come on, I'll show you what I'm gonna do. Just take 2 of these old fence posts and rip them down. Now they're a little corkscrewed, so I'm gonna do my best to try and cut that out of it. We'll see how it works. It doesn't have to be perfect. I want it about 2 1/4 inches wide. All right, I got my 2 block out forms made. This one's out of an old 4x4. The other 4x4 was so twisted, I just couldn't get it cut straight enough to work. So I fabricated another one out of a 2x4 and a piece of this corner trim molding I had left over when I replaced that. What I'm gonna do is water this down. Now this old clay is dried up, or at least on the surface anyway, and it's really hard because when I put this dry topsoil on here, it's gonna suck that water out. And I want it to bond to this clay here when I pack it in. Now what I'm going to do is just sprinkle a light layer of this topsoil where that form's going to sit, and it's basically to act as a cushion. So when I put this down, it'll have some of this topsoil under it to pack into. Do you need to do it this way? I don't know. Some of this I'm just making up as I go along. I've got a 1/2-inch hole drilled at the end of each one of these. One other thing I'm going to do, now down here where I'm at in Texas, we have fire ants. So I'm gonna go ahead and sprinkle fire ant killer in these areas so they don't decide to come up through here. Now I'm gonna set this one first. My drip line will come down, tee here and go that way, and it's gonna connect with the valve and the plumbing and everything in that direction. And from the wall, I set this 12 inches. Puts the pipe running at about 13 inches in the center. The holes are in the end so I can drive some rebar down in there to hold it in place. I don't want them too deep because I gotta be able to pull them back out by hand. Now I'm gonna wet it one more time. Wash in that ant bait. I don't have much left in here, so I'll just dump it in there and spread it around. And we just spread it out. All right, let's go get some more dirt. Now I just shovel in more dirt. I'm gonna overfill above my boards. So when I pack it in, I've got more than I need. I'm gonna spread this around. I got it all overfilled, and I'll just take my 10x10 plate packer and I'll start packing it in. And I'll pack on each side of the boards really well. And I'll pack over the boards, and I'll go back and forth, and I'll pack it 2 or 3 times till I think I got it really good and packed. Now some of you might be thinking, why didn't I water it down before I started packing? Well, I didn't, because this stuff is going to stick to the bottom of this plate. Because then what happens is you get big old dirt balls on the bottom of this, and when you go to pack, it leaves holes, and I want it to be flat and smooth. So I'll pack it dry like this, really tight. And then when I've got it to where I want it, I'll come back, take my shovel, and remove all the excess. And when I remove the excess, I take the outside edges down a little lower than what the boards are. Why? I don't know. It's just the way I do it. And I take all that excess off, I put it in the wheelbarrow, and then I water it down. And I water it really heavy to try and get it soaked all the way to the bottom of the dirt. That way it packs really tight. And then I just take and throw dirt back over it and pack it again. And when I pack it this time, I pack over the board first really well, then the sides, and then back over it again. Now I know some of you are thinking this is a lot of work, and I investigated on YouTube because, well, that's the universal area to look for anything. And the only thing I ever found was how they did it when they hooked it up to your hose bib. Nobody hooked it into their Inground sprinkler system. They all used a hose bib. One, when they do it that way, they're losing probably 25% in this heat to evaporation. Whereas with me, it's all gonna be underground. And I'm not gonna lose any to evaporation. It's gonna be 100% into the dirt. Now it looks like it was built this way and it came with the house, which is gonna increase the value, especially here, because right now there's people that are really worried about their foundations because this ground is shrinking so far away, they're worried their foundations are gonna break. Me, I'm not gonna have to worry about that. Now, I got that all packed in for the second time. I just remove the dirt, then I'm gentle and I shake my form up and down to make sure it gets released. Pull my forms up out of the dirt, then I just pull out the rebar and it's all done to start again. Now the nice thing is each one of these boards is 7 foot, and so when I get to going here, I can do 14 foot at a time, and it won't seem so long to do it. And just like that, my trench is formed for my tubing to go in a little bit later. Now it's just a matter of rinse and repeat. So here's how I'm going to figure this. Sod comes with about 1 inch of dirt on it. How do I know? I just looked it up. If this is ground level and sod's going on top of it, that's already 1 inch higher. I'm going to go a 1/2 inch higher here, and from here to here is about 22 inches. And so I'm going to do about 1/4 inch, a foot of slope away from the house. So when it rains, the water runs this way. So that means I need to be 1 inch above level over here. Taking my 3-foot level, and at that pencil mark there, that's level. So I went up another inch from there, which means I want the top of this sprinkler head at the top of this level. The sprinkler head is at the top of dirt on the sod, and so from the top of the sprinkler head up is all grass. And I cut my grass about 2 inches high, so that puts the mower clear up here and shouldn't affect this at all, which makes this above the groove or the trough that my drip line is going to go in. It's actually great. That way my drip line runs underneath it. I don't have to worry about my drip line coming up and over like this. Now when I get to some of these other sprinkler heads, it may not be that way. It may be that this either runs through it or under it, but we'll just have to see. But I got all the dirt put in with my trench for my drip line to go in, and I've kind of watered it some. I keep it watered every day just so it stays packed. And I say every day because, well, it took a little bit longer than I thought it would, and a lot of that was, well, because of this heat. It's been 100 at least every day I'm doing this, so naturally I have to take a few breaks now and then to get some water and cool down a little bit, because as you see, I got no shade out here. It's all in the sun. But as you see here, when we get to this corner with the boards, because I don't have a curved board to put in here, and so as what I did was I just came back afterwards and cut me a half round circle here, because I wanted to have a half round circle so that my drip line could just be a continuous gentle bend around, and I wouldn't have to cut and make a T here as if I did it the other way. And that way it's one continuous long line. And the other thing, all but one of the sprinklers were able to sit in here like this. The pipe that connects it from the sprinkler head to the water supply is actually lower than what this bottom of this trench is. So I was able to actually keep these in place like this and fill around them, which is really nice. Unlike here, in order for the top of this spray head to be at ground level, it had to come up and over it. Now I've left these two boards in because I'm going to have to come back and forth here with a wheelbarrow. I'm going to be walking, and I didn't want these trenches to collapse in the meantime. So I'll leave these in until I get the drip line put in, the gravel around it and everything, and then these will come out. And then what I did here is I cut my own trench around the base of this fence post, because coming out this way really wasn't a good option, and because I wanted this to stay wet, so I'm going to run my line across here. Now I've had to do a lot of work. There's been multiple sub-projects just to get to this point. And don't forget, I did this during a time where we had multiple daily heat index warnings. Temperatures 100 or plus degrees outside. And I won't lie, it was quite a workout. And I lost a few pounds. But I know in the end, it's all going to be worth it. And if you're sitting there thinking, hey, wait a minute, where'd this stone walkway come from? Well, click on this link right here. It'll take you to a video where I'll show you where I got these from, what all went into installing the stone walkway. And be sure to subscribe and come back for part 2. So until next time, happy DIYing.